Hello, my name is Nick. This is Makuzai Design. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you've not been here before, welcome. Today's project, I'm going to be making a tabletop with breadboard ends for a farmhouse kitchen, the base of which I'm upcycling, or have upcycled in fact already. I'm going to show you the table now, and then I can explain the project as we go along. So this is the table in question. Picked these two tables up at it was one of these reclamation places that was closing down, so I had them very cheap, which is a good thing. It's a pretty rustic build, I've got to say, probably mid-century, 1930s, 1940s, maybe earlier than that. Who's to tell? It's a pine base, and this was the top to it. Now, there's a couple of things with this top that the reason I'm building a new one. Somebody has cut down the length of this. This has got rounded edges at the front and square edges at the back. Somebody's cut it down. It's almost as if they wanted to fit it up against a wall. It's also got a crack. Now the crack I could have lived with. I could have repaired that, not a problem. But the tabletop itself is too small, so I'm going to rebuild that. I also want this. This is quite thin. It's about 20 mil. The wood that I'm going to be using is about 30 mil, so it'll give it a much chunkier appearance. Like this table, I'm going to have the tabletop in natural wood. I'm going to stain it because I am using pine. There's a few tricks and things that I want to put in place because I want to keep it very, as you can see from the build, I want to keep it very rustic. Okay, let's get on with the project. Okay, that's the domino all set up there. There are two camps in the domino sphere. There's the lovers and there's the haters. I've always thought, I don't know how right I am, that the haters are the people that don't have one or haven't tried one. I'm in the lovers camp. I absolutely adore it. Now, the dominoes I'm going to be using are quite thick. They're 10mm thick, so nice and sturdy. Going to be using a lot of them. What I've done is I've set the machine, made sure I've got the right cutter in, and then what I've done is I've taken a scrap off cut of this and just put a hole in there just to make sure that it's falling exactly halfway and that it's fitting the domino correctly. So now I can just get on with cutting these. I'm not going to bore you too long with that. I will just crack on, and then when I've finished we can have another conversation. .40 domino mortise cut in 5 minutes flat. Gotta love it, haven't you? Gotta love it. But before we get the dominoes in and start a glue up of any sort, there's a couple of things I need to prepare. I need to prepare the bench for the glue up. I need to get my clamps ready, etc, etc. But before we do that, if you remember, I said that I was going to put a slight V groove in there. Now I've set up just a little hand router for this job. It is a tiny amount, to the point where you think, what was the point? There is a point, because what will happen is when the table is built, maybe not on camera, I don't know, but certainly to the eye, you will be able to see it, especially after it's been stained, and that will give an appearance of age. Okay, so whilst it's only an appearance, I think it's just much more pleasing to the eye. Again, you know, whatever floats your boat, you do you. It's the same way as doing a breadboard end. There are so many ways to, when we come to doing the breadboard part, there are so many ways to do it. You just do you, okay? But the fun of this is, and being together on a video, is about looking how other people work, enjoying the smell of wood for me. For those of you who have been here for a while now and have seen the other videos, will know that I've not put a video up for quite some time, and the reason for that is we have some domestic issues which have had to not be resolved because they're not resolved yet. When I say domestic issues, don't worry, there's no arguments going on. My father-in-law has vascular dementia, and he's not a very well man. So, of course, over the last few months, he has been our priority. Add to that, we did do a trip to Copenhagen as well, which was nice. So I haven't been down to the workshop for a while. So this project for me, although it's a simple project, it's about getting back down here, getting back into habits, getting the smell of wood back in my nostrils, which I thoroughly enjoy. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Woodwork is all about that, enjoying yourself. So, as I say, this is going to be a very minute cut. But I'll get these done and then we can get on with the glue up. So that was literally a slither. I can see the detail here, and to me it's very pleasing, and that's what it's all about. I don't have a client in mind for this, so it has to be what pleases me, and that's what woodwork is. That's what woodwork is. It's got to be something. A project has to be something that pleases you or pleases the client, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Not everything in woodwork has to be perfect. I'm making this almost worse in order to make it better. So, like baking a cake, you've got to crack a few eggs and you end up with a cake, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know too much about baking, but with woodwork, sometimes making something look worse is actually effectively making the project look better. Okay, gonna get cleaned up here, and then we're gonna get on with the glue up. Okay, not the easiest glue up I've had. I've got some more clamps ready. I'm going to have to get the first two on, spin it around, put the third one on, climb underneath and do all sorts of little tricks. Right, but needs must, so I'm going to crack on and get this done, and we'll see where we are at the end of that. So Working on the basis that you can never have enough clamps. If you're at a loss as what to buy me for Christmas, yes, clamps. Looks a bit like a Chinese. I put some cows across the top, just make sure it's flat. I pulled it in. We've got the dominoes lining it up. I'm pretty pleased with it. Just going to let that dry. Now it is definitely time for a coffee. Well, a quick coffee turned into me going home for the weekend, because I don't know why I'm surprised by this at all, because I live in Wales. Today is now raining, but over the weekend it was fine weather-ish, lukewarm, but at least it was sunny and blue sky, so we went away in the van. Usual story for me, if I can get away in the van, I will. Anyway, left this for 48 hours, back today, blinking freezing. I'm going to get the clamps off and then we will see what we're up to. Okay, so clamps are off and it is remarkably flat, which is lovely. All the joints have come together really sweetly. So we'll sort obviously the top of this off when we get to sanding. What I'm going to do now though is I'm going to square off the ends ready for putting on the breadboards. I'm going to square them off so that I know I've got that, at least that's perfectly flat edge. Best way to do that is with a track saw. So I'm going to get that done and we can then start working on those breadboards that we've been talking about. Okay, they're squared off, nice. I'm just gonna, I've kept the same setting on the rotor, or I haven't moved it, for when we routed the length of the planks. I'm going to just router along the edges here and router the edges of the breadboard before we get them fitted, so that I've got a nice V running that way as well. So I'll get that done and then we can start marking up. Okay, what I'm doing here is marking up the breadboard ends for breadboards. Now, there are a number of ways that you can connect breadboard ends. I'm going to be using dominoes. As you know, I'm a bit of a domino fanboy. But you could do a dovetail joint across. You could do fancy types of mortise. You could do all sorts of connections. Whatever, as we've said plenty of times in videos, this video and others, whatever floats your boat. So what I've done is I've marked up across here, ready for where the dominoes are going. I will follow that mark around to the back side of, or the underneath of the table as well. I'll explain why later on. Now when I'm cutting the dominoes on this, basically the middle one will be on the tight setting. The domino has tight, loose and looser. So to put it in simple terms, but the tight setting on the middle, and that will be glued, and it will probably be glued on about an inch either side of that, of the domino as well. These will be left dry, and these will be cut tight on this side, but on this side they will be cut loose, and that's to allow the movement. The only thing is then is obviously you've got to stop this moving around, just wiggling about. You know, we want some wood movement, but we need to stop it wiggling. So that's why I've marked all the way around, and we'll come to that later in the video. So I'm going to crack on here, and then we'll get that domino machine out and we'll start doing the fit up. I've dominoed them up and I've dry fitted the breadboard ends. And the reason I put some clamps on is I'm going to spin it over. They were lovely and everything's joining up nicely. But what I've done is I put the clamps on there just to make sure it stays in place when I drill the hole for the pegs. And the reason I'm going to drill the holes for the pegs is from the underneath. I don't want marks on the top, but I don't mind plugging them underneath. So I'm going to drill some holes, take it off. I'm going to elongate the hole in the domino itself so there's still some wiggle room, then fit them back up, glue the center ones, and then fit the plugs themselves. So I've got a nice little dowel going through just to keep everything steady. So we know that we've got everything going well that way, but we need to make sure it just doesn't come that way, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm going to get this spun over and then we'll get those drilled out. I've already got these marked out, and what I've done is I've got a plug cutter set. I'm using the very small one, the 8mm, and I've got them all marked out. I've got a flag on the drill itself because I don't want to go all the way through, obviously. So we'll get those drilled and we will see where we stand. Right, out with the worst drill press in the world, but the cutters are good, so that's a good thing. Knock out some plugs ready to put in that later on in the day, and it's just a scrap of the offcut of that, so it should marry up quite nicely. Okay, so with the drills held, the dominoes elongated, put back in, and now they've been plugged. So that should make a nice solid bond. Just going to trim fit these. And then we can get on with getting it turned back over again and cleaned up. I've got a cut off, obviously going to cut the breadboard to size next. I think is probably the next job. And then before we go much further, we'll be on the wonderful, wonderful sanding stage. A bit of clearing up to do on this side. As I said, I left it over the weekend, so hey ho. Who doesn't like a bit of cleaning up? Me. Well, it's certainly starting to look like a tabletop. I've trimmed the edges of the breadboard. I'm gonna start sanding now. I have got a few other jobs to do to it, but I'm gonna start sanding now to get the majority of it done. And then I am going to be rounding over the edges all the way around both sides. Now, when it comes to the stain, I bought a dark oak, but on a softwood, that will come out quite light. So I'll see how the first one looks, and then we'll see how the second one looks on top of that if I think it's necessary. And then we can look at some wax varnish on top of that. And I think that will be pretty much the job done. But what I'm happy about is that everything is nice, flat, secure. The breadboards have taken well. I've left wiggle room, so I know that any expansion should be taken care of. I've plugged the holes, so everything is dandy. Obviously, I've got to sand the bottom as well. There's some glue on the bottom as well. I've got to get that off. I am not going to bore you with sanding, so the next time you see now, or the next scene, I don't know what you call these things in YouTube, but the next part of the video is going to be putting the stain on and getting towards a close. Yeah, I just decided that what I would do is got go around some of these knots with a bit of CA glue, so that we're not all disappointed later. I think I've got most of them now. It'll just save me a lot of hassle if something goes wrong later. That's about it. That's all of them done. We're down to 240 grit now, and it's taken a little bit of time, but it's relaxing really when you think about it. What I will do with this, I will, not necessarily on the underneath, but on the top and sides, I will water pop it and then do it with the 240 again once I've finished. Okay, so with all the sanding all done, I'm gonna put on the first coat of stain. I have done the underneath and let that dry. That's only gonna have one probably, in all honesty. What I do with this particular stain, this is in the UK, it's Ron Seals. It's a really good stain actually. What I'm gonna do is just brush it on liberally, get it into all the cracks, and then wipe it off with a cloth, and then we'll see where we go with that. It will probably then have a very, very light sanding before the second coat, and then before we do the top coats, which is going to be a wax varnish. Well, I did end up putting a second coat of stain on here. Now I noticed when I set the camera up, this looks a little bit darker in patches. It's actually come across very even. It's all the artificial light that's going on around here at different places. But it does look quite nice. There are a couple of layers of wax varnish to go on the top of that, and I'll show you the completed table at the end of the video. There's also some little brass inserts to go in where the keyholes are. But Amazon Prime is not doing its job. They didn't arrive, so I'm hoping that they say they're on the way, so I hope they'll be delivered and there when I get in tonight. I'll fit them in the morning, give it a bit of a clean up because the wax varnish will be dry by then, and get some photographs done and put it up on the website for sale. Haven't decided on the cost yet, but it hasn't cost me a lot to do, in all fairness. Okay, that's it until the next time. Give Breadboard Ends a go. As I said previously in the video, there are many ways to do it. Whatever floats your boat, give it a try. If it goes wrong, just try again. Simple as that. Okay, until the next video, take good care of yourself.